So Christopher Nolan's Odyssey film releases this week, and just like any Nolan movie, one of the biggest topics at hand is of course the variety of formats that you could actually check this movie out on. You can watch this movie in 40x, Dolby Cinema, and even on film with some theaters showing it on 35 and 70mm film. But of course, the most popular format when it comes to this movie is going to be IMAX. Whether it's digital IMAX or 70mm IMAX, you more likely have heard about this format before or even seen a few movies on it yourself in the past. What actually is IMAX? Because at first glance, yes, it's a larger screen, but there's actually so much more that goes into bringing this format to life, including different aspect ratios that create larger images, different projectors which enhance colors and shadows, and even special IMAX or IMAX approved cameras that offer higher dynamic range and more rich contrast. Also, it's just really important to know what you're paying for because anybody who's purchased IMAX tickets before knows these tickets are not cheap whatsoever. And to understand IMAX, which by the way is short for Image Maximum, you need to know that there's two main types of IMAX. The first being the most common, which is standard digital IMAX with laser, and the second being the much more rare 15 perf 70mm film IMAX or GT. And the whole purpose of why this format was created back in the late 60s was to create an immersive experience that would be able to cover your entire peripheral vision with a large screen. Also superior quality, opting to use 70mm film stock rather than the common 35mm film stock used during that time period. But as for the first type of IMAX, which is digital, or some of you may have heard others reference it as LIMAX, this is the most common and accessible form of IMAX across the world, with well over 1,800 of these screens across 90 countries. And the reason why some may use the term LIMAX in a derogatory manner when talking about it is because, as the name implies, it uses a digital projection to project the movie on screen using 4K dual laser projectors as opposed to 70mm film as original IMAX was intended. However, these laser projection systems do serve as an upgrade compared to just a regular standard screen because they do provide higher 4K resolution, which results in deeper shadows and a wider color gamut, as well as being shown on a much larger and curved screen. And the reason these IMAX screens are curved is to help your field of vision see the whole movie more clearly without the edges of the screen being too blurry or too far, as the larger the screen, the longer it takes for light to reach the outskirts of the image. So by making it curved, it basically just brings everything closer for the projector to project the movie on. And these IMAX auditoriums hold screens being on average around 30 feet tall and 50 feet wide, so you're getting a much larger screen end result, and you're also getting an expanded aspect ratio to fill that bigger screen. And aspect ratio can get a little confusing, so to put in simple terms, aspect ratio is simply the measurement of an image's width to height ratio. The first number in an aspect ratio represents the width, and then a colon separates it from the height. And the aspect ratio for these digital IMAX screens is 190 to 1, which usually shows around 20% more of the frame compared to just a regular standard screen. So with IMAX, you're just seeing more of the frame vertically and just overall more of the image. But you're also getting a much better sound experience as well, because IMAX auditoriums are specially built to do something called acoustic absorption, which is basically eliminating sounds either echoing or bouncing off of surfaces. And the reason they do this is to prevent muddy or overlapping audio, as well as making every sound, no matter how tiny, pinpoint and precise. And they achieve this by lining up the interior of the walls with insulation that absorbs the sound. And the screen itself is also made up of countless holes so small you can't even see, but these tiny openings allow speakers situated right behind the screen to pass through easily and deliver direct sound. And this is made possible through IMAX's newer 12 sound system, which is basically just 12 speakers in the movie theater, 7 on the sides and in front of you, and then 5 overhead. So you're getting a really immersive sound and image experience, and you've probably seen the term filmed for IMAX on a movie poster or trailer, and it's not to be confused with filmed on IMAX, which we heard a lot lately with the Odyssey, and the difference is pretty straightforward. Filmed for IMAX just means that IMAX certified digital cameras that meet IMAX's technical standards were used, cameras such as the Arri Alexa 65 or the Sony Venice, while filmed on IMAX means that they actually used IMAX cameras that run actual film stock. But speaking about film stock, that brings us to the second type of IMAX, which is 70mm IMAX, and this is the more lucrative and rare format. There's literally only 40 cinemas worldwide that are able to project the Odyssey on this format, but what makes it so coveted? For starters, the size of these screens are absolutely enormous. The average for one of these can vary, but the average is about 70 feet wide and 100 feet tall, which makes LIMAX look so puny in comparison. And I actually did some research, and you can actually fit about 3 to 4 of these digital IMAX screens onto a 70mm film IMAX screen, which is absolutely insane. I mean, it's not called Grand Theater for nothing. These theaters have to be specially built to not just hold these gigantic screens, but also have projector rooms spacious enough to hold these huge IMAX projectors and space for the super heavy film stocks that sit on these big discs called a platter, which run the film reels through numerous cleaning rollers, which prevent the film from getting dirty or sticky. And these 70mm film stocks are absolutely insane. The platter for Oppenheimer's film stock, for example, was about 600 pounds and 11 miles long. And I was actually personally given a cool little tour of the projection room during the Project Hail Mary run at the Irvine Spectrum. Shout out to all those people over there. They're amazing. But it's just safe to say you cannot include one of those projectors in any single projection room. And unfortunately, there's actually a huge scarcity of actual projectionists because running movies on film was rendered obsolete as most movie theaters shifted to digital projectors in the 2000s and 2010s, and places that taught film projection basically shut down. And 70mm film is even more outdated compared to 35, as most theatrical releases on 70 kind of died out in the 90s, and not to mention having to learn IMAX technology as well. And the circle of projectionists is so tiny that they literally all know each other. So hopefully IMAX finds a way to train more projectionists in the future if they want to keep this format alive, because the demand is very much there. But just like digital IMAX, 70mm IMAX also comes with its own unique aspect ratio to fill that enormous screen, utilizing a 1:43:1 aspect ratio, and in results you basically get a big squared image, so you get to see much more of the film's vertical image, 40% more to be exact, and you get to see this because of course the huge and special 15-perf 70mm film stock, and the 70mm film that IMAX uses to project is even larger than traditional 70mm film because it has 15 perforations on the stock, which are little bracket holes on the side, as opposed to just the 5 that regular 70mm film has. And IMAX 70mm film has to be ran through the projector horizontally as opposed to vertically because of how big it is. But in the end, you get an image so big and so tall that it literally covers your entire peripheral vision. In a 70mm IMAX theater, there is no bad seat because you just literally see the entire image no matter where you sit. But making movies on this format is an extremely difficult process, which is why you only see the best of the best filmmakers utilize it. The cameras that they have to use are so bulky and can weigh up to 400 pounds after rigging it, so you cannot do any handheld movement stuff with these cameras, and they are also extremely loud. However, for Christopher Nolan's Odyssey, they used the newer IMAX Keeley model camera, which is a bit lighter and 30% quieter than the older ones, but the film magazines can only still run 3 minutes at a time. But they did so many innovative things with this movie, as it was the first ever movie to be entirely shot with these cameras. Which means for the entirety of the duration of the movie, that entire square image is going to be completely full. There is not going to be any shifting aspect ratios because it's filmed entirely on these cameras. So I am so excited. I cannot wait to see that entire image for 172 minutes filled. Previously, Nolan's last film, Oppenheimer, was the movie with the most 70mm IMAX footage, but it all began in 2008 with The Dark Knight, becoming the first movie to have sequences shot with these IMAX cameras, with about 28 minutes utilizing the full 1:43:1 aspect ratio. Unfortunately, however, we cannot see that full aspect ratio at home with physical or digital releases. IMAX likes to keep their formats exclusive to the cinemas, which kind of sucks because personally, I would pay even more to see that full aspect ratio at home. However, I do understand keeping that experience exclusive to the theatrical experience. But with what Christopher Nolan has done with IMAX is just honestly an achievement in its own because of how much it's catching on. And the technology is only improving from now, which is going to be absolutely insane to see how IMAX technology evolves in the next 10 to 20 years. But you might be wondering, hey, how did I see Project Hail Mary on IMAX 70mm film if it was made using digital cameras this year? And the answer is quite cool. Cinematographer Greg Fraser, who's my personal favorite DP in Hollywood, by the way, uses a process called film out, in which he laser prints digital footage onto actual 15-perf 70mm film stock, and then rescans it once again so it gets all the grain and look of film and able to project using film on IMAX projectors. Which is just one of the coolest things I've ever heard. He's done it now on The Batman, both of the Dune films, and now Project Hail Mary, and I just don't understand why more movies don't choose to do this. So not only are you seeing more of the movie with 70mm IMAX, but you're also just getting a crispier image end result, because while digital IMAX has a resolution equal to about 4K, 70mm IMAX's resolution is around 12 to 18K, which is just insane. Plus the sound is also better despite using the same 12 sound system as digital IMAX, because digital IMAX has to use uncompressed digital tracks like any digital movie, while film has to be synced with multiple separated uncompressed tracks, which in the end give it a more strong bass. And quite honestly, there's just nothing like watching a movie on film and then paired with a screen this huge. Like, I really encourage anybody who's really excited about an upcoming movie like The Odyssey or Dune Part 3 to go make that trip and go see a movie on this format at least one time. But with that being said, I hope you guys learned at least one thing new. And let me know in the comments down below if you're going to be seeing The Odyssey this weekend or if you already saw it and what were your thoughts.